The Andes. Snow-topped peaks, unchanged for millions of years. They've stood unmoved, silent witnesses, as man's greatest empires crumbled into ruins. But even ruins tell a story. And in today's wide world, we're looking at the remains of some of man's greatest civilizations. First, to Peru, where astride this craggy backbone of South America once ruled the mysterious Incas. 700 years ago, the Incas controlled a mighty empire stretching from Chile to Ecuador, 3,000 miles from north to south. This was the capital of the Inca Empire, Cuzco, 11,000 feet up in the Peruvian Andes. Today, its outward appearance is Spanish, not Inca, because the Spanish came here as conquerors in 1532. They subdued the Inca armies, then systematically destroyed their culture and heritage. But there's nothing subdued today about this modern Indian town. Peruvian Indians are poor, but they take pride in family and community ties. No cash changes hands at this weekly market. It's a case of bartering, not buying. This housewife is exchanging leaf vegetables for potatoes. The market's the high point of the week for everyone. Well, almost everyone. Ornaments and trinkets meant to attract the tourist's eye are faint reminders of the fabulous Inca wealth that passed through this market after the Spanish conquest. Today's bead necklaces and bracelets are poor substitutes for the exquisite jewelry worn by the Incas. Earrings were a royal status symbol to the Incas. Sadly, though, this woman is wearing a copy of an old Spanish coin. But modern textiles reflect the old Inca designs, squares arranged in rows and filled with recurring patterns. From Cuzco, an excellent network of roads spread out through the Inca Empire. Steps were cut into the rock to overcome the steep inclines. Perhaps that explains why the Incas had no use for the wheel. This is part of the royal route of the Incas, the longest road ever built, over 3,000 miles, and longer than any Roman road. It was faster, too. Hundreds of fleet-footed messengers constantly traveled the highways, covering up to 1,200 miles in 5 days. Roman charioteers could do no better. Inca roads were not built to promote trade, but to ensure conquest. They linked a series of fortresses and provincial capitals like this one called Machu Picchu, high on a mountaintop. Inca armies marched quickly, then rested at supply bases along their routes. This is Tambo Machai, near Cuzco, a royal stopping place complete with fountains and gardens. Incas were highlanders and knew the value of reliable water supplies. They diverted streams, built conduits, and carved viaducts out of the stone. They used water as a weapon, too, cutting off the supply to an enemy's fortress. The greatest of all Inca fortresses was Sacsayhuaman, which guarded Cuzco. From these gigantic battlements, the Incas fought their last encounters against the Spaniards. Ramparts zigzag in 3 parallel lines for 1,500 feet. 30,000 Indians spent more than 20 years hauling vast limestone blocks by hand over wooden rollers. Some of these huge stones are over 20 feet high and weigh 200 tons. They're so well placed, not even a razor blade could slip between the joints, and not a drop of mortar was ever needed. Inca masonry was remarkably sophisticated. These baths and changing rooms were built for a royal Inca. They were carved out of solid stone in a style that looks unplanned and organic. At Machu Picchu, these walls seem to blend with the natural rock face beyond the doorway. The square shape of the doorframe is a distinctive feature which shows that the Incas never mastered the archway or vaulted roof. Machu Picchu is a city of steps, an endless complex of stairways linking the different levels. Inca houses, halls, and barracks were usually rectangular. one-roomed structures covered in wood and straw with a single doorway to the outside. Stone projections like these were left to give laborers better leverage with their crowbars. This was the finest Inca structure, the Temple of the Sun in Cuzco. Incas believed their ruler was descended from the sun, and they worshipped him accordingly. What is today only a stone shell was once lavishly decorated with solid gold and silver. From these holes, gold wires supported a massive golden disc, a replica of the sun. This temple is now bare, and what treasures have survived in museums are only a shadow of the fabulous Inca wealth. Little remains in Peru of the Incas' golden heritage. In fact, the present-day Indians have only inherited the earth, but they continue to work it in the same ways as their Inca ancestors. They use the same primitive tools to plant hardy vegetables, herbs, and grains. Ironically, about half the vegetables and food grains eaten by the world today were first cultivated by Inca farmers throughout the Andes. Potatoes, tamales, chili, maize, and berries are still grown on these terraces, enduring links with the ancient civilization of Peru. From the golden age of the Incas, wide world moves even further back in time to the Bronze Age in Thailand. We're in the country's northeast, where in the last few years, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts that question the early development of the human race. Close to this small town of Ban Chang, skilled researchers from the Thailand Fine Arts Department are finding startling clues about the activities of early man. Like all archaeological digs, the work has been slow and laborious. These 12 feet deep foundations have taken 2 years to excavate, using only the most delicate tools. The whole area around Ban Chang is rich in remains, and the workers on this site are excavating old tombs that contain the possessions of the dead. The most common finds are pots and pottery fragments. They've been dated by the new American technique of thermoluminescence. This measures the radioactive age of the pottery, whose atomic clock was set at 0 by the heat of the firing kiln. Pieces of bronze were found with the pottery, so it was assumed they were all the same age. The Thais think they're on the verge of an archaeological breakthrough because tests are showing the fragments to be almost 6,000 years old. Bronze, an alloy of tin and copper, was man's first step in metallurgy. So the Thais believe the Bronze Age may have started in Ban Chang and not the Middle East as claimed by most history books. In Bangkok, many Ban Chang pots are pieced together in this private museum set up by a Thai princess. Hundreds of relics have been collected by Princess Chumbot, and rare items, like this hand-painted water jar, are thought to be superior to Chinese work of the same period. This restorer of pottery enjoys the challenge of a jigsaw puzzle. And when a piece is nowhere to be found, he simply makes a new one. The museum in Princess Chumbot's palace has literally become a treasure house of history. and the Thai people come in their thousands to learn about their country's contribution to modern civilization. Jewelry is well represented here because the people buried in the Ban Chang tombs were decorated with numerous bracelets, necklaces, and brooches. They're in bronze, ivory, and jade from China. Luckily, some of the Ban Chang pottery has been recovered intact. Many of these shapes and surface motifs are reminiscent of the classical Middle East, prompting a whole lot of new questions about artistic origins. Aside from pottery, the bronzes have most significance. No one is clear how the alloy was made or what method was used for casting the bronze. But they're a first for Thailand and take pride of place here. Every aspect of the lost civilization is on show, from a ceremonial armband, intricately engraved, to a humble cowbell. Archaeologists aren't sure of the exact role of this bronze figure, but they think it's related to the religion of Ban Chang's Bronze Age people who are known to have worshipped phallic symbols. The central piece in this collection is a food dish made for a royal child. The handle is in the shape of a dancing figure. The demand for Ban Chang relics is now so great that supplying them to tourists and collectors has become a substantial industry. But buyers should take care. There is a government ban on the selling of artifacts. In many shops, the supposed antiques are fakes, specially made to cash in on the Ban Chang boom. Some of the fakes are so well made that only experts can tell which item is 5,500 years younger than another. Despite small-scale exploitation, the discoveries at Ban Chang have caused excitement in the world of archaeology and focused attention on Southeast Asia as one of the most fruitful areas for research on ancient man. From the Far East to the Middle East and the Holy Land of Jordan, this area was the heart of Greco-Roman splendor 2,000 years ago, and today, Jordanians live alongside the remains of this glorious heritage. One perfect example is this huge Roman amphitheater in the center of Jordan's capital, Amman. It's still being used for public occasions. Only a few miles north of Amman is Jerash, the finest example of a provincial Roman city. Along either side of this colonnaded street were majestic temples, statues, fountains, and theaters. Hundreds of these massive columns still stand in Jerash, but their tremendous weight has pushed many of them below ground level. The main street of Jerash is deeply marked with the ruts from iron chariot wheels. In its day, the noise and bustle in this street must have rivaled the excitement of Rome itself. The ruins of the Temple of Artemis are the most impressive in Jerash, and no wonder, for she was the patron goddess of the city. Her temple towers majestically above everything else, and these elegant Corinthian columns still stand after several earthquakes. Here, on this sacrificial stone in the temple courtyard, human offerings were given to appease the gods. But the gods couldn't save Jerash, and it quickly declined after the fall of Rome. Earthquakes in the 8th century hastened its end. These stones once formed the archway to the Temple of Artemis, but they were thrown about 60 feet during an earth tremor. Crusaders from Europe gave Jerash its death blow, and by the Middle Ages it had become a ghost town. But modern tourism is breathing new life into Jerash, as well as into other parts of Jordan. One of the most remarkable tourist sites is a few hours' drive south from Amman. It's desert all the way, where local sheep, like their Bedouin owners, survive in the barest scrub. Bedouins are a dwindling people, but about 40,000 still reject government offers of settlement, preferring to continue their nomadic existence. This is the Valley of Moses, entrance to the amazing site of Petra. The name means rock, and that's virtually all there is here. The valley is an ancient riverbed, yet it's soon obvious that many of the surrounding shapes were not carved out by water. The entrance to Petra was easily defended, but just in case, these silent sentinels were supposed to help out. There are horsemen and 2 snakes, meant to dissuade violent intruders. The people who came to this valley 2,500 years ago were the Nabataeans from Saudi Arabia. Petra became a city in a desert because ingenious Nabataean engineers built an elaborate system of stone channels and tanks to guarantee a year-round water supply. Merchandise from all over the Orient passed through Petra, and with that trade came ideas about industry, agriculture, art, and architecture. The Nabataeans fashioned a brilliant civilization, synthesizing all they had learned from other cultures. Petra is the visual remains, a confusion of architectural styles. This is Al-Khazneh, the treasury. It isn't a building so much as a carving. Every inch has been hewn by hand out of the surrounding rock. Metal tools, plumb lines, and complex tables were used by the Nabataeans and confirmed their mastery of mathematics. Most of the detail is amazingly intact, but some carvings have suffered ill treatment. The carved urn at the top is badly scarred. Many have tried to break it open, thinking it was hollow and full of treasure. You have to keep reminding yourself that all this is sculpted, not built. Unfortunately, many of the soft sandstone figures and architectural motifs have been eroded or simply damaged by visitors. It's not certain whether the Khazneh was a temple or a tomb. It may well have been both. The wealth that carved it came from taxes imposed on caravans traveling north from Arabia to Damascus. In death, as in life, the Nabataeans made sure they had a splendid resting place. The Petra that exists today consists largely of tombs. These were probably for a man and his wife. Occasionally, the name was carved on the wall above the occupant's grave. Petra's wealth inevitably attracted the Romans, who eventually became the masters here at the beginning of the 2nd century AD. Their influence can be seen in this theater, a splendid construction which wasn't excavated until the early 1960s. Incredibly, this too is carved directly from the rocky landscape. The Romans added to Petra's glories, but the city's best days were over. Its death knell was sounded when the caravan routes were diverted away from Petra to Palmyra in the Syrian desert. These winding steps lead to the Corinthian tomb, burial place of very important citizens, perhaps even the Nabataean kings. Its lower story is stone built, rather than carved, one of the few stone-built structures that have survived. Close by the tomb, an American study group has found that Petra is an archaeologist's dream. The group works out of this base camp, and it's led by Dr. Philip Hammond. This is a large pot from a painter's workshop, dating probably from the 1st century AD. Coins are regularly found here too. This bronze one, from the 4th century, bears the head of the Emperor Constantine. This incense jar is 3 centuries earlier. It was used for holding frankincense or myrrh and was closed by a clay stopper. The jar was opened by breaking off the neck. Dr. Hammond believes these hills still hide an immense hoard of antiquities. His team has hardly scratched the surface, and the full story of the Nabataeans in Jordan remains a long road of study and excavation. Yet, it's the kind of story that provides us all with an insight into people from the past.